Welcome back to the Curiosity and Connection podcast. Today's guest is my friend Ashley, and the curiosity subject is historical romance. So let's dive into it. Help me understand how you got into this role. Was it a direct path or was it a detour? Like you knew off the bat, or was it something that someone introduced you to it? So let's start from there.
So I feel for me, everything starts with Jane Austen, Pride and Prejudice.
Okay, so how did you get into that in the first
So
place?
my mom introduced it to me, and I
At what
watched
age?
when I was very little. So I watched the 1995 BBC miniseries.
Yes, with Colin Firth,
Like,
Mr. Darcy.
right. I was really young. I probably was just finishing elementary school.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And then
How do you grasp that when you're watching it from like that young?
I don't think I fully did.
Yeah, you were. What was it about it that you were just like, I love this, or what were your feelings towards it?
Well, I don't know if I had so much choice in watching it, like, that was on and
It was,
that
like,
we were
background,
watching
yeah.
it, and I just fell in love with I liked the love story. I liked that there was dancing and, like, balls. I remember thinking even, like so I got to, like, maybe 13 and into high school, like, wouldn't it be great if we could go to a dance and it was on the other people to ask you to dance and, like, you could fill up and be like,
Yeah.
"No, I'm done,"
Oh, the
and
old school like dance card.
with a card and everything, yeah. And Pride and Prejudice is kind of got a bit of a fairy tale ending, right?
Yes.
Because imagine if the attractive person happens to be
Wealthy.
super
Yeah,
wealthy.
you come from a poor family.
Yeah, poor family. Yeah. So it's a happy story. And I did read the novel though.
At what age? Like following
when I was in high school.
Okay, so your mom introduced you not by choice because she was watching it at the time.
That was like so I grew up in a household where everyone was older than me because I had the three much older half siblings.
Mhm.
So I was exposed to a lot of content way older than I feel like was the age
It's fair.
that the
Yeah.
target audience of those
Yeah.
shows or media or whatever. So like
You grew up faster in the terms of the exposure of the maturity.
or I just watched stuff and didn't understand.
Yeah.
And like sometimes they'd my family would put a movie on and they would fast forward inappropriate scenes, but like we'd still watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I mean, Pride and Prejudice did the BBC special anyway doesn't have any
no nudity,
sex references or anything, so there was no fast forwarding.
Nothing compared to today's Bridgerton.
Right, exactly.
Shonda
No,
loves
Bridgerton you can't watch with your children. Like if they glance at it.
We'll get to Bridgerton in a second.
Yeah.
So you decided, was this out of curiosity to be like, you know what, I want to read the book and just see what my understanding of it is, or?
I think it was I just saw the book in an Indigo or in a chapters. It would have been chapters. And I was like, oh, I like this miniseries.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that. And because I rewatched that miniseries many times. We had it on VHS tapes.
I have it on DVD box set, yeah.
Okay. And so I would watch like they would promote other like historical romance type works on there. And then I would say it's been a consistent interest most of my life. There's been some waxing and waning, but like I watched there's a great North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell miniseries. It's another like,
is this Masterpiece Theater or is this like BBC?
Some of it is PBS.
Yeah. PBS used to when I was growing up would show like Masterpiece Theater or BBC stuff.
Right.
We didn't have BBC channel on cable, so that was like the indirect route to access to BBC.
I've tried to expose because for my kids, I've tried to expose them really early. So like my son as a baby, he had the Pride and Prejudice board book.
What's that mean?
It was a hard book and it had the mini version of Pride and Prejudice in it. And it has quotes from the text and you can like, there's parts that you can move.
The board book? Like where did you discover that?
Also at chapters. And so like my kids, when I was prepping for this, I was talking about Pride and Prejudice, my kids know exactly what Pride and Prejudice is.
That's hilarious.
It's cute. I should have brought the board book. Yeah. It's a cute book though. But so they are exposed. I don't know if they know what Bridgerton is as much, but they understand, like they've seen things with like women in ball gowns and that kind of thing.
And from that, like reading Pride and Prejudice or Jane Austen, did you segue into other similar Jane Austen, like the rest of her saga, like all her
So
works,
there
or
was a period where I sort of took a almost fell into like a hole of what they called chick lit at the
what does
time.
that mean?
So literature for women,
Mhm.
chicks. But it would have been like almost like rom-coms in a book. Like basically I've
Mm.
learned now I don't like rom-coms.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Like a 90s movie rom-com, but rom-com book I wouldn't read now.
Yeah, so where you're at right now, yes.
Yeah, but definitely now, like I think there was a certain like the Bridgerton kind of filled the gap because what was missing is there was no like modern lens ever applied to any of these
Yes.
stories. Um, so yeah, it's kind of like you can only relate to them so far.
Yes, but even then, like, when like, back to you said, you went from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, the book, to, you said chick lit?
Yeah, so I kind of so the other influence, I guess my mom influenced me a lot. My mom read a lot of an Irish author called Maeve Binchy,
Okay.
and I read a lot of Maeve Binchy, and and I from Maeve Binchy, that's when I would like I would go to try to find more Maeve Binchy books, and I discovered like there was an
So
author.
what is her genre? Is it, like,
So
period drama, or
it
is it fiction? Like, wha
it's yeah, so it's fiction. What I would describe Maeve Binchy's like chicken noodle soup in a book.
Mm.
Uh, basically women-centered stories about, trying to chart your path in Ireland. And it
Mm.
was I wanna say they're set in maybe the 70s, maybe
Okay.
60s, or actually, I should double check that, but her stuff has been adapted quite a
Yeah.
bit too. But I was in that range, and then there was an author when I went to go get more Maeve Binchy called Emily Giffin who was being promoted, and she wrote something called Something Borrowed, who also has been adapted, and
Mm.
that was when I started reading these, like, what they called chick like, it's not really a term anymore, but
What
this
is it called
chick lit.
now?
Now, I think it would be either called directly romance,
Okay.
because I don't remember even when I was into Pride and Prejudice, like, I wasn't aware that that was a romance story. I
Mm.
understood that that was historical or
Yes,
classical,
yes.
and I don't remember romance being, like, put in front of, like, a category of books, like, these are romance books,
Uh,
unless it was, like, a Harlequin,
yes.
right? So these were, like, women-centered. The chick lit was, like, women-centered, but it was light.
Right.
That's what I would say about it. It was very
It was
light.
like it's always happy ending?
Yeah, happy ending, and, like, trying to think of some of it kind of funny. Like, you'd get these characters who are, um
So what I'm hearing is from that Irish author, you looked for similar authors, like
yes,
Irish.
yes. So I found another similar Irish author called Marian
Mhm.
Keyes, who also wrote a little bit more modern to, like, the timeline I was living in, similar books about, like, family and women,
Mhm.
but they were also happy endings too.
So you went from, like, Regency to, the 70s, which is what the t sounds like the 2 Irish authors were, but
70s and a little bit, yeah. Well, I didn't know I could stay in Regency, right?
yeah.
I didn't really put a lot of thought into trying to find other book recommendations. I
Right.
kinda just whatever was being promoted and
Yeah.
trendy at the time was. Now I'm much more like, "Okay, this might be trendy, but do I like it, and do I go
Yeah.
with something different?" But,
But
uh
it sounds like what you were it was more out of, like, your own curiosity, aside from your mom's influence and at the early start, right? But with Indigo, which is our equivalent of a bookstore chain here, it used to be called Chapters Indigo, now it's just Indigo. You went to that section and you looked for, like, similar at the time, like you said, romance wasn't a category. And, how did you, like, branch out? Like, why did you not stay in the 70s? Like you said, you weren't aware Regency was an
that's a good
option?
question. I don't know. I can't trying to think of so I think yeah, I would just get swept up in the trends because
Mm.
I remember so, okay, I
What do
feel
you mean the trends? Is it like, New York? Times bestseller, like under the romance category? Or how did you know like where was the trend?
It was like what was being pushed, I think, at the bookstore, or like what a lot of people were talking about. Because I remember, I don't know if you've ever heard the reference to 2012 YA,
Yes.
young adult, 2012. So there was like I read the Hunger Games, but before it was like the Hunger Games.
See, the young YA, the only series I knew YA, I never read it. I watched it on cable, was Sweet Valley High.
Okay, I was a huge Sweet Valley High fan. Yeah, so I read those books as like a child, and yes, I also watched that on cable a little bit. But I think Harry Potter, I never read Harry Potter, but that had such a huge impact on the publishing industry, and everybody wanted to publish the next Harry Potter, and so then that's where you got the Hunger Games. There was a really
So
popular.
would you say like Harry Potter is a YA?
Oh, I think it was. Yes,
But
I think it was supposed to be YA.
Help the listener understand, or the audience understand, what exactly is YA, young adult.
So this is, see, because I think a young adult could read something like Pride and Prejudice.
Yes.
But to me, it's like usually centering on a character that is a young adult or coming of age, and you know, not as much.
It's clean.
But there's it. So, but yeah. So it's debated. Yeah. It's debatable whether, because I think some stuff got marketed as YA that wasn't. But yes, ideally it's you know, something that a parent could get for their young adult.
So what is the age category for young adult? Like, would you say?
So
I recommended.
So someone explained to me once, because now, ever since there was this concept of YA, there's a concept of NA, new adult. New adult is like you've finished your high school, and now you're still young, but you're not a young adult. You're new adult, so you're like when you would have gone to college in the States or university, or you're doing like, that's new adult. So then I would say any young YA is anything like high school, or like the other category, middle grade, as they call it, middle grade, YA, and then new adult. So new adult, one of the people who led that charge, I would say like, I want to say like 2015 would have been like Colleen Hoover. She was considered new adult. And she was like writing about like these younger people. Like when I read, going back to the Irish authors, it was like people were like, the main characters were older than me, like they were having babies and things like that. And I was younger. Yeah. So new adult, I read a little bit, again, just because it was popular. And it was just like what was out there. But to try to tie all these like disjointed thoughts together, I did always love Jane Austen still. So I got I exposed myself to some of her other work, Sense and Sensibility.
And this is like leading up to like the movie release, like with Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, or is this post?
I was a little bit ahead of the movie release with Sense and Sensibility. Emma, there's a Gwyneth Paltrow movie. Yeah, I watched that before I read Emma. But Jane Austen, I think, is actually pretty easy to read compared to, say, like if you try to directly read Shakespeare.
Jane Austen, which I could digest, to like, oh my god, this is so amazing. Regency, I just fell in love with the English culture, and then I hit up Dickens, and I was like,
oh, Dickens.
I was like, this is so depressing.
Like, what did you read Dickens? Like A Tale of Two Cities?
A Tale of Two Cities. I read a few of his books, but my grasp of the English language back then, it was so complex. So I understood in terms of context, but I was like, you know, like you said, Jane Austen always ends in a happy ending.
Okay.
And you can giggle, and there's all these like ups and downs. Whereas Dickens is just so realism, and it's depressing. I was like, I can't. It's just like, I can't. I had to like, I put him down, and it was just like, but there was so much of the PBS, like, you know, of the BBC adaptation of this version of Dickens, this version of Dickens, or this version of Austen, this version of Austen, always like the Pride and Prejudice, or a whole bunch of other ones, right? So that was my only world of the English literary culture. Anyways, going back to what you were saying with Harry Potter, like that's a huge transition. But I love that you're covering different periods, from Regency to 70s Irish to like Colleen Hoover YA, and then like you said, I think the trend, kind of like what you said, it allows you kind of to explore a different world that you normally wouldn't default to, and you kind of your curiosity led you there.
Yes, and I think I didn't really realize I didn't put a lot of thought into choosing what I was reading. I was like, "What's good? What are people are saying is good
Right.
or new and good?" And then that's what I would go for. And then there was these classics like Jane Austen, mentioned Elizabeth Gaskell, that I would kind of read alongside if I would like wanted something that was considered more literature. Because I was also well, so I was aware that so I remember being in university and being told that a lot of Canadians didn't read Canadian literature.
Yes.
And I
Unless it
remember
was high school
asking,
requirement.
yeah, and I remember asking the person who said that to me, well, what do you consider Canadian literature? And you know whose name they said first?
Margaret Atwood.
Margaret Atwood.
But Margaret Atwood, like, did you read any of that?
So when I was in undergrad, I was like, oh, I can read literature. I'm going to read literature. And so I read The Handmaid's Tale. I remember a guy I was seeing got me a copy. You want to talk about depressing?
Oh my God.
It is depressing, but Margaret Atwood's a great storyteller, and I think she has kind of like a light touch. Some of the depressing stuff can be a bit too heavy-handed, and I don't know, there isn't any balance, I feel like, in how they're depicting these really sad, horrible events. Like, even if I am, like, let's say, I don't know, pick a subject that'd be really depressing. Let's say I'm born in a really poor socioeconomic situation. I'm the victim of violence or sexual assault, whatever. I'm still a full person with a full range of emotions and experiences. And I don't want to see I want to see the depiction of a full person, not just of like this
trauma,
and it's like I don't want to see like a sensationalization of that, and that only be the whole story you're telling. Like
you're more than just that.
Yeah, and I also don't want it to feel like I just don't want it to feel so heavy. Like I don't want to read it just for the shock value.
So that's interesting because like you said, like would you say you've always been an avid reader? Like,
when I had to read a lot for school, my reading for pleasure would go down. And now that I haven't done school in a long time, I've become concerned that I've only read for pleasure. And I gotta, like, you've heard of people referencing like anti-brain rot challenges. So this is becoming very popular too. I feel like people are now realizing that sometimes we're just picking up books that are reading for pleasure, or we want to substitute ourselves into the role of the main character and imagine that that's happening to us, and like we're not.
But it's escapism, isn't that what television and
television
the world is?
Yeah, it can be, but I think there's other books where we're like getting outside of our comfort zone, where we're learning something like.
But that's Rachel. She was talking about that's the beauty of the literary world, because you can imagine yourself in that character, even though you don't have the lived experience.
Yeah.
And you can walk through their life path. You know what I mean? So it's giving you like, it's kind of like acting in some ways, right? Like I can embody this character, and see can I relate to that character, even though it's so different from who I am. And that's another thing too. Like in reading a lot of these characters or these literary diversity, the range so far, like, did you see yourself, like, obviously where you were at in those moments in life when you were consuming those books, were you able to relate to any of the characters?
So for me, there's two ways that I have done that thing where I imagine myself as the main character. Oh, how lucky they must be that they got to meet this. Or like a lot of people, like I read Twilight. Imagine if my fated like mate was a wealthy vampire who all the other vampires hurt people, but not this one. This is the good kind, and that's the one that I'm destined for, or whatever, right? Like, so I've definitely done that sort of like if there's something about it that's like maybe you need that at the time, like you need that escape. But there's also the other type of reading I've done where I try to learn about the life experiences of other people. I've tried to, whether it's a historical context or setting in a different geography, a different socioeconomic class, whatever the case may be. And I feel like that's a little bit more of like a learning experience. And I think one of the things that I learned when I was doing that type of reading, or when I have done it, is like there's a real universality.
What is that?
So we're all trying to find happiness and love. Generally speaking, we
The
all care
foundation of
about,
humanity,
yeah. So like,
across the board.
right. So the same, and if I tie it back to Pride and Prejudice, like the same things that Elizabeth Bennet was trying to do, like, should I consider economic circumstances when I pick who I marry? Like, do I want to marry someone rich? Do I
Do I
want
wanna
to
marry for love
do I want
and
to marry for
sacrifice my
love?
family's wealth? Yeah.
Do I want to marry someone who I like their family likes me, my family likes them, do they like my family?
Do I lose my
Do
autonomy?
I lose my autonomy? Like, these are actually all pretty
Relatable even
right, they've
now.
transcended a lot of, right? And there's a interesting thing about what Jane Austen was trying to make a point with Pride and Prejudice, that at the time, the middle classes, so the Bennet family, was the same as the wealthier
Yes.
classes, like um like the Darcys or the Bingleys. And you see, I think in the book that there's a character, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. She's very wealthy,
Yes.
outweighing all of the characters. She's the wealthiest, right? And she has a moment with Elizabeth Bennet, where she's, Mr. Darcy, the love interest, is her nephew. And she's
Yes.
like, who are you to have any claim on my nephew, or even entertain the idea of liking him? Because there's a rumor about the two of them.
Yeah, or
And
even like her nephew was scheduled to marry, or
well, she's like promised to marry
her daughter,
her daughter, who's very sickly and unhappy. But so I feel like Catherine de Bourgh's like society saying, like, who are you? And Elizabeth Bennet says, what do you mean, who am I? Mr. Darcy is a gentleman and I'm a gentleman's daughter. We're equal. And then society, aka Catherine de Bourgh's like, but who are your aunts and uncles? Who are your cousins? What do they do? Like, who are you really?
It doesn't just stop there. Yeah, it goes like,
yes. And then I think for Catherine de Bourgh, she's in shock because even though she has so much wealth, she still can't fully control the situation to the extent she wants to. And that's another dynamic we see even today play out, right? Is like there's limits.
Control,
yeah, there's limits. You can't force people to love who you want, who you want them to, right? But I remember, we all kind of want to see like Elizabeth succeed against that like social pressure. It's nice that he happens to be a very wealthy, attractive man, right? It's not like she has to give up very much.
Yes. I think one of the things, at least now, like, we're gonna take a segue here, is a lot of the historical romance that I've been reading, it's always like a Viscount, like the peerage.
It's always the rich
the
people.
wealthy
Yeah,
people,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's like Viscount, a duke, a baron's probably the lowest. What's the other one? A marquis.
Yeah.
Like these high status, and it feels like in some ways like they try to paint it off like the woman can. In some ways, it's like she's rescued by this wealthy hero kind of thing. But Lorraine Heath, what I like about her style is she actually like gives voice to the second sons.
Oh, that's nice.
I like that because it's kind of because the peerage laws back then was the eldest inherits everything. So even if you are a second, third, fourth son of a duke, you have no money aside from the allocated monthly or annual allowance. So to see her explore like second, third son storyline, and that they can end up with like, a gentleman's lady who normally are only like permitted to marry like the best of the cream of the crop. I kind of like that because it normalizes like as much as you want, like kind of like you said with Elizabeth Bennet, like her happy ending, and he happens to be wealthy. But it also normalizes that like that there are other people who don't have that, it can still have the happy ending in their own
Well,
respective way.
yeah, you don't really see, and I think other people have taken up trying to tell these stories, but you don't see what happens to the other Bennett sisters other than
The recent
Lydia.
one.
Yeah, so now they are trying to do more of that work. And even like I had even read a book at one point that's written from the perspective of one of the servants in the Bennett household.
Okay.
So they are trying to like tell these other stories. Yeah, like what happens to Mary, what happens or I guess you see how Jane ends up too,
Yeah.
kind of, but you don't really like,
No, you don't get her perspective.
yeah. But it's interesting because it's like in these societies, you're looking at the very wealthy few percent as the
Yes,
focus of the
yes.
story, and the rest, everybody else is just kind of like like there's a real depiction of like the happy to be a servant, right?
And did you get like when you're reading, like, especially we're jumping timeline, it doesn't have to be in the linear manner. Like, when you read historical romance, especially whether it's Regency or post-Regency, and these women are marrying, like, their happy ending involves a wealthy um protagonist, or even Twilight, like you said, a wealthy vampire.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
does it become tiring after a while? Like, you're like, can I see something else? Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
because it's yeah, exactly. It does. And it's also you start to feel like it breaks the fantasy because it's your brain will not like accept that, as your brain knows that's not reality, right? So you can't sometimes it like you can't like pretend, like I can't pretend that the main people that were options like for me or for my friends were like a 50 Shades of Grey dude, right? Do you know what I mean? Like that's pretty rare. Those are like the rare few stories. And yeah, to get the love and like you have this great connection and they're extremely wealthy. Like in the case of Elizabeth Bennet falling in love with Mr. Darcy, his parents are dead.
There's no in
She
love.
doesn't have to get. She doesn't have. Yeah, she doesn't have to win them over. She gets to just go to Pemberley. The sister's really sweet.
Yeah.
You just flip her like sheet music, and she's
Yeah.
happy.
I didn't think about it from that lens.
Like because my husband has 3 sisters, an Italian mother. I had to work a little bit to win those people over, and I came into dating him thinking, well, I'm pretty great. They're gonna love me. Here I am. But a lot of families, everybody does things their own way. You gotta, even if you are. You have a lot in common. That doesn't mean you have as much in common as you think. I think, right?
But like you said, like obviously Regency, like Jane Austen, but even to back to the Irish, it had, like you said, a very chicken soup for the soul. But like, did you relate to a lot of the 70s character? Like, how was it contrasting to the Jane Austen era in terms of like happy ending? Like, not were they relatable characters? Like the partners they end up with, you can see, like, does it translate to now?
So I remember, so if I go to like Maeve Binchy and some of her characters, she does touch on social class a lot more, and there's very clearly some characters that are naturally wealthy. There's some characters that start off not wealthy and are trying to climb, and then there's some characters that are what you would call like the lower class, lower socioeconomic status. And one of the themes, I think, if anyone ever picks up those books, one of the things I saw is your happiness doesn't, or your, overall life joys and stuff do not go in the same direction as your wealth. So you would get a really quote unquote economically poor character who might be happier than, say, one of the characters who's super wealthy. Not to say you wouldn't get a character who's wealthy and depicted as happy, but it doesn't seem like those things seem to be separated in different storylines. Like I remember there was one character who the woman was a cleaner and her husband, he was some kind of blue collar something, but he struggled with alcoholism. And her sister married well. So her sister got out of that life and was like more wealthy. And her sister is envious and self-hating, that she's envious of her her, I can't remember, I think it's older or younger sister who's like literally cleaning someone else's floors, but happier than the wealthy life she has. So I think that was one of the things that I
Just
always
shifting
found
your perspective.
interesting. Yeah. And they don't really cover in a lot of these stories, it stops when you decide to choose the person instead of like, well, how do you live with them? How do you have kids with them? And what happens? Like, what happens after the happy ending?
Yes.
How do you keep it up here?
Yes.
Right. And I think we're both married and have been married for some time. It's hard to keep things
Yes. Your identity
happy.
shift.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if you have kids, that's even gonna.
But see, I think that's why I like, and I highly recommend this to. I think like Lorraine Heath is a rarity because I read the entirety of her catalog. It was recommended to start off with The Scoundrel of St. James,
Mhm.
which was like her middle series. And then when I'd finished all the series, I went back and read her Texas series. I'm
Mm.
generally not a Texas kind of person, but because she's half Texan and half English.
That's a cool combo.
But if you read all the way back, there's this interconnectedness of like multi-generational characters, and you see them appear later on, like when their children are older, and how they navigated the complexity of children and motherhood. So you do get snippets of it and the challenges. So I think that to me was more relatable. Whereas kind of like what you said, like they choose the person, they choose each other, and then they end with a wedding. And then if you're lucky, you get like what is it, a synopsis afterwards,
Epilogue?
epilogue.
Yeah.
Like Quinn, she has a tendency to do an epilogue, right? So like Julia Quinn, of like they had after they get married, it's like, oh, they had 2 kids or 3 kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
So, but it still shows that they're at their happiest, but it doesn't show the realism of like what is life afterwards, like navigating the challenges, the reality of it, right?
Well, and they never do that with, like, so another big interest of mine was, like, star-crossed lovers. People who fall in love and are not supposed to be in love, forbidden love. Romeo and Juliet are dead. Shakespeare's covered what happens from his perspective.
How did that
If
come
that
about, the
happened.
star-crossed lover?
I think I like the idea that your love could be so strong that it would be a despite situation, and that it's not choosing for, like, these
Did you just stumble
economically.
upon that, or was it like you're like, okay, the curiosity aspect is you're going to what's trending, and I'll explore that, to star-crossed lover.
I think it's because I think I like the idea of love in as a part of a story. I don't like a story that completely ignores love and sex because I think that
That is
they're
foundational.
two
Yeah.
big categories, and some stories will ignore those 2 things. So those would have been not my stories, but I feel like one of the strongest forms of this, like, story about who you choose to have as your partner is, like, when you're going against the grain. And I do feel like I was kinda naive about, because I think I'd read so many stories where it, like, magically works out. Like, have you ever read a story where someone falls in love with someone who's different from them? They choose against all odds, they get together. Have you ever read it where they're like, "No, I made a mistake," and they come back and they're like, "No, I gotta go back to my
No,
family." Yeah.
the thing is, I didn't. My literary world was very small. I didn't start, aside from required high school reading, English reading. Austen was the only book I ever took up in Dickens. And then from there, I went to like the Bronte sister, right?
Oh, okay.
And that's such a different, like you go from like Jane Austen to Bronte, which is, I guess, like they call it gothic romance, where like there's like
Yes.
supernatural, but it's like it's broody. The male protagonist is often very like broody and dark. It's so different. Yes, they're wealthy, but I think it's more of that dynamic. And again, like if you think about is it Jane Eyre?
Jane Eyre?
Yeah, like wealthy, and she's a governess. Do you know what I mean? That is classism, but obviously governess are one up above the servant, but it's still like a huge dynamic. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, I didn't start, like I was talking to one of my close friends, and I was telling her like ever since Julia Quinn's Shonda Land's Bridgerton, I've just been I read all her catalog, and I'm like, now what? So I go and look up like similar authors to Julia Quinn, and I'm reading other related author. But No, I never got to that. And she's like, "You never read Harlequin when it was, like, in your high school years?" I said, "I heard of the term, but I never."
Yeah, I never read I don't to this day, I don't think I've ever read a Harlequin
Yeah.
or I did have a little like, I kinda turned my nose up at, like, the mass market grocery store paperback, which is a bit snobby of me because, there's good stories everywhere, but, Danielle Steele, have you ever
Yes.
heard of that author? My mom read a lot of Danielle Steele. I could not read Danielle
I
Steele.
never read her book, but it was so adapted as, like, the go-to movies,
There's a
the
yes,
romance.
yeah, yeah.
But to kinda answer what you were talking about in terms of, like, have you ever read the complexity? My go-to of the '90s was, like, Disney happy ending,
Yeah.
like, these disillusion, take on, like, you meet your prince and then the conflict resolves itself and you end a happy ending. All the rom-coms in the '90s ends in happy ending, kinda like what you're saying with the Jane Austen. It doesn't have that, like, follow-up of how life is, you know what I mean?
Would you wanna read that if that was a book? Or would you be like, "No, I just wanna see how they get together?"
No, I'd be curious.
Yeah.
I think now that you brought it up, I'd be curious, right? Like, the only time I mean, I wouldn't say the only time, the only other movie that I think was against all odds, um, Serendipity.
I don't I think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that's a rom-com, right?
Yes.
Yes. I've seen that one. Um, I'm trying to remember, like so I feel like with a lot of rom-coms, they do what's I've heard termed the third act breakup,
Okay.
and then they get back together. Like,
Yeah.
there's some initial tension, usually it's, like, miscommunication, um or so I either see the miscommunication trope, right? They just don't understand each other. If they could clearly make clear like each other's intentions, then they would have been together earlier, and there maybe would have been not enough content for the movie. And then the other one is one character has been hurt, and they can't open themselves up to this love because they've been hurt, and so they like get they blow it all up because they don't wanna get hurt. So I've seen those 2. I feel like a lot of love stories rely on those 2
The
specifically.
trope, yeah.
Yeah, as and then they have this, like, the 3rd act breakup. So towards the end of the story, right, they've already gotten together, you've had your montage or
Yeah,
whatever of
there's some
them
sort of
being all happy,
misunderstanding.
and then there's a reason to break up. Maybe they find something like, "Oh, who is it? There's a picture of this
Yeah,
woman,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
who is this?"
But it's just a one moment, but life isn't like that, right? So,
Mhm.
having shifted from that, which
Yeah.
is, like, the very rom-com trope, and there's a resurgence of it now, with Netflix, I like it because I think because it's, like I think that's why I like historical romance is there's that predictability of happy ending.
Mhm.
I don't have to think too hard.
Mhm.
Obviously, I think Mary Ballow's book are definitely one of my favorite because she talks a lot about symbolism and just life, and I think the way she words things her books are like 600 pages, but
Well, that's pretty long.
yeah, but they're you can relate in terms of, I like her book because both protagonists are coming from trauma in some ways.
Mm.
Whereas if you think about, like we'll use, like, Jane Austen as a benchmark, especially Pride and Prejudice. What trauma are they struggling with aside from their middle class, wealth? You know what I mean?
Oh, nothing. That's
Nothing.
nothing, and the Bennet sisters are known to be quite beautiful too,
Yes.
right? And then they
So everything
have
is working towards them aside from the
yeah.
financial limitation. Like, it's
Yeah.
still
So the one hardship they do have is there was never a Bennet son, right?
mhm.
So they know
They're gonna lose that
they
goes
there's yeah,
it goes
so
to their cousin
it's
Colin.
all entailed, yes, it goes to Mr. Collins.
Yes.
Mr. Collins, so that is the hardship, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's not trauma in any way,
No.
no, and, like, with Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, it's a miscommunicate like, it's a misunderstanding between the 2 of
A
them,
Pride
right?
and Prejudice.
Yeah, so they don't really understand each other, and when they do, they're like, "Oh, yeah, we're into it." But, yeah, they don't have no one, no one's coach got robbed, nobody died in childbirth, that type of thing. I feel like, yeah.
I think the trauma or some sort of pain that someone struggles with, both protagonists navigating it, it's more relatable because everybody has some level of trauma, right?
Yes, and so, okay, this is gonna I've tried to explain I cannot think of a better way to explain this. Stay with me for a second.
Mhm.
So, when I describe, like, as I've become an adult and, been an adult for a while, I realized there's a certain, people that I connect with better than others, and to bring it back to talking about these books, usually the people that I connect with better are people who have gone through pain
Mhm.
and who are able to talk about that. And we can connect over our pain, even if it's caused by totally different things.
Yes.
People who are the,
But that comes from vulnerability,
yeah,
right?
but people who have either perhaps they've had a super charmed life and I'm happy for them, or, they don't really like, maybe they lean more positive, like they have no darkness, they have no intensity in them. That's fine, but those aren't the people that I
You
connect
connect
with, and it's the same with media and of all types, movies, books, right? I can't it's very hard for me personally to connect with a story that doesn't
But
have some down.
at what point did you get to that realization, that shift to say, "I'm done with this choosing each other happy ending and there's no follow-up of the real life," to, like, star-crossed lover, which and help me understand why, like, the star-crossed lover. Is it because, like, it's a reflection of love love isn't always the solution in relationship? Like, you can love each other, but it requires a lot of work and then challenges, or what is it
I think I've been
specifically?
fascinated by people who make choices that seem counter to their best interests in some ways, but they're, like, pursuing their own path, pursuing their heart. I found
Mhm.
that very interesting because it's
Mhm.
like you're choosing despite, not just because
Mhm.
of. That's fascinating to me, and I think, um, you know, maybe I have a little bit of a, "Oh, I'm not gonna do what people tell me to do or what you're
Mhm.
supposed to do," in me, like, just in my personality of, like, "I'm gonna go my own way." And, like, so both my parents are on their like, to each other as their second marriage, and they're both, and I think being raised by divorced parents where it was like, they fell in love after they chose the wrong people for them, it's kind of like gave
Yeah.
me a little bit of that, like, "Oh, I wonder,"
Yeah, going
like,
against the
yeah,
grain.
star-crossed lovers do that, but, like, some of these other, like, Jane Austen historical romance stories, like, sometimes that I don't know, do you feel like they choose against who they're supposed to choose? I don't know.
There's some characters where some storylines where, I think they do it out of convenience, and then despite their attraction towards, you know, who they're gonna end up with, like, you can tell, like, they don't quite understand or grasp why they're attracted to this person.
Mhm,
It goes against, like, what they're bred or society has bred them to
mhm,
believe, that especially during, like, the pure drama where it's like, um, you're as a female, you're conditioned to, like, look your prettiest presentable, be palatable, and have them choose you so that you have a comfortable life. And kind of like you said, that you can end up the peerage is an example where they often marry out of convenience for wealth to progress that wealth, but then they have mistresses on the side because they're so miserable with each other because the law doesn't favor falling for true love because it's a classism, right? And so in that regard, it's just like, yeah, or
and that's not part of the Jane Austen love story
no.
formula where you're, like, in love with, or even perhaps you have no love, right? Maybe you just have your mistress for, like, more carnal stuff,
But I
and then
think
you
that's
have
why
your
I like
wife for, like, your
but I think
society
that's why I like
family.
Lorraine Heath because the Scoundrel of St. James is focusing on these are like they were once a group of thieves.
Oh, interesting,
They
okay.
were once a group of thieves, and the one thief ends up being, the lost grandson of a wealthy peerage.
Okay.
And so when the grandfather finds him, he realizes how significant his group of thief friends were, so he takes them into his womb and educates them.
Oh, nice.
He educates them, but no matter how he educates them and exposes them to the peerage society, it goes against who they are. Like, they can mask as, like, being palatable amongst the peerage, but their core identity is still a thug. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah,
And so they're navigating these trauma of their thug life, and their thief
yeah.
life,
Yeah, no, I like it. Thug life, that's it.
yeah, their thief life, and so it's interesting in that regard because, they end up, like, mingling with, like, the women they marry are from the peerage, and these women who were, like you said, they were once, engaged to wealthy men end up following the heart with these scoundrels.
Like, but maybe, like, is there a depiction of a character that's kinda, like, bored with the men in the peerage, and these guys have a little something different because they have that more, um,
I think it's
rough
more of
background?
No, I think it's more of contrast because one was married to a duke and he was, um, very physically abusive,
Mm.
um, and and, they end up, like, shipping him to Australia because they have inside as part of a convict, and so the one she was nursed by the doctor, who's now a doctor, but he was, like, part of that thief life, and she fell for him because she realized that there is a different kind of love rather than what
Mm.
she's known, which is she was bred to marry a duke. She bought into that, and then afterwards, the mask comes off, and he's just physically violent to her,
Mm.
and she realized, like, there is a different kind of love, so I think there's that
That's a
strip
very
away that
yeah,
title, but it's
yeah.
relatable because it allows I like that more because second love or follow-up loves allows you to appreciate the contrast of where you were at, that naivety to where you are at now and that maturity to see that there is a different kind of love that can meet you where you're at. But you also have to work with your own insecurities and your traumas. Do you know what I mean?
So, I have a question for you.
Mhm.
Would you say that you like romance that has a happy ending, but you lean towards ones that have some tragedy in them?
Tragedy throughout the
Not necessarily
reading
throughout, but, like, it's
at the
pretty
end.
tragic to be married and, like, be with an abusive person for a long time, right? For example, like, do you know, like, sad that's very s like, a sad plot
I
point.
like I said, to Lorraine Heath's book, I think they are more relatable. Take away the period, the time period, it still translate now
Hmm.
because I think we're all even like when we talk about online dating, or even you meet someone in person through word of mouth, you never truly know someone, and when you meet them, they're presenting the best version of
It's
themselves,
true.
right? And it's only through like longevity that you start to unravel the mask and the imperfection and how you navigate that.
Hmm.
Are you accepting of the imperfection? And how do you work with that imperfection? Is it triggering your own imperfection and insecurity? So it's how you work as a couple, as a collaborative effort to kind of hold space for each other's flaws and imperfection and move forward rather than being like kinda like what you're saying, like the 3rd act breakup, right? Miscommunication or misunderstanding, they end up together. They do have that there, but I think it's more complex in terms of human nature, and I think that to me is more relatable, and it's kinda like you said, you and we have vulnerable conversation about the reality of life, and I like that. I agree with you. Don't get me wrong, I can still connect with people who are happy, but it can only go so far.
Okay, has anyone ever told you to lighten up before?
Oh, many
Me
times.
too. So, pretty recently, actually, someone was like, "It must be, you talk a lot about, like, pretty heavy, sad things." It was because, actually, I was talking about a book I was reading
Mm.
that had some sadness in it, and, yeah, they were like, "I really think you need to lighten up." And I feel like there's something to be said for that, like, for lightening up, but I guess where I'm trying to get to is a balance between maybe I don't wanna stay too much in the sad intensity,
No, I I
but
I hear you. I think in that regard, I think because I've done the healing journey and I'm so open about my mental health, and I'm very advocate towards it, that when someone says that to me, what I hear is, "That's a you problem, not a me problem. If you can't hold space for my complexity and all you wanna live in is toxic positivity, I'm not the right fit for you."
yeah, it's just what
Because,
I
like,
yeah.
I don't say to you, like, "Stop being always happy." If I'm not gonna always say if I'm not gonna say that to you, what gives you the right to say to me, that you should lighten up. That what I hear from that is it shows me that you're uncomfortable. What I'm mirroring in you is bringing up something in you that you're not willing to address.
Mm.
It's causing some discomfort. It goes back to like, with our children, like this idea that when our children's moving through discomfort, it's so easy to want to default to fixing and repairing them, right? Because if they are comfortable, then we can reach a state of comfortableness. And instead of um, defaulting to just immediately repairing and fixing them, what I've learned is to kind of hold space for that discomfort so that I can model my own discomfort and be like, the reality of life is we can't always fix something right away.
Mm.
Some situation, or like if you're hungry, I got you food. That's fixable. But when it comes to emotions, like let's try to hold space for each other's discomfort, and be okay with it. So your body becomes okay and acclimatized to the discomfort emotion, so that in the future when you do experience another range of discomfort, you're more okay with it. Where someone who says to you lighten up, they don't have that experience of being comfortable with their emotion, and hearing you talk about it makes them uncomfortable, so it's easier to say, "Lighten up," so that I can feel more lighter.
Yeah, and more yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah, it's I agree, I agree. I think it's interesting. I wonder if there is writers, possibly even ones today, authors right now that were like, "Oh, this is a bit too heavy what you've written, and maybe you need to put in some."
I don't know from the literary world because I haven't had feedbacks in terms of I can't imagine what an author, like, they're probably working with their publisher. I think at the end of the day, if you are writing as an author, whether whatever genre it is, and this is holds true to you, why should you contort yourself to make it marketable or palatable? It just means that that publisher or that editor is not the right fit for you.
Mm,
Go shop around and find someone else who will meet you where you're at. Kind of like your tribe, right? We talk about like we connect because we can have vulnerable conversation. Not that we can connect with people who are fluffy or toxic positive or always happy. It's just that we can't sustain that long term because life isn't always like start to finish. I'm always happy. Because in a day, the reality of human emotional ranges, you can have like more than like five emotional range. So to say that you're always happy, I would stop and think like, are you a psycho? Is there something wrong with you that there's an absence of all these other emotions? Like you're trying really hard to stay positive,
yeah.
and it makes me wonder, you've got a lot of like repressed anger if you're only masking, showing the world and presenting this palatable side, which is I'm always happy.
Hmm, interesting.
I think because where I'm at in my life, I believe I lean in towards like vulnerable and truth.
Mhm.
Whereas before, I think um I would have probably contorted myself as a people pleaser and just be like, "Oh, you want me to lighten up? I'll lighten up."
I think I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
I think I was like, "Oh, geez, maybe I do need to lighten up."
Yeah.
Um, maybe I need to lighten up. And so one of the things that I struggle with the most in that area is, if my mood is one thing, like my mood is low or high, it's very hard for me to, okay, if I'm in a low mood, now I got to appreciate your joke, or maybe someone's making kind of an off color joke, politically incorrect joke, which
Mm.
could be funny potentially, right? I do think comedy needs to push things. But if
You
it's
know,
opposite to my mood, it's like it's the same thing, but it's the same thing with consuming any of these books we're talking about, or watching any of these movies. Like I have to have a certain mood, and I'm really mood directed, I guess you could say.
that's everybody because it's like you have to have the headspace to consume something because where we are at now, you and I, obviously you're dealing with younger children and my daughter's older, is your headspace is just dwindling because your energy is spent focusing on caring for these two children, right? So to say, I have the headspace now to go and watch this, even though it's a light piece of media, you don't have it in you, right?
I mean, and like to take it back to like, these balls I talked about, but I like the balls in Pride and Prejudice, and they're in Bridgerton too, the modern version, and they're very opulent. The
Mhm.
flowers, the outfits, and I have the 2 young kids. I got to get them dressed. No one's there to dress me and do my hair.
Yes.
I think I would look a lot better if I had.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll stand there. I'll stand real still. You pull that corset as tight as you want. I won't complain. You know what I mean? Someone make this look good, right? Now we're like, and then, now it's like, you're helping other people in your household. And then it's like, well, how much energy do you even have left?
That's like I said, going back to it's the same with anything. It's when you do have the headspace to consume something, you consume it out of appreciation. And even if like there are times when I try to watch like season 3 of Bridgerton and it was not my favorite. I think across the board a lot of people didn't like it with Penelope and Colin's story. I had to pause because my capacity wasn't there. I had a long day at work, and it's like I'll save it for another day when I have the capacity to return to it. So that is normal. It doesn't mean that you have to always be in a good mood to watch something that's good mood, right? You know yourself. Like if you feel like you're drained, how can you commit? You just want to not think,
Yeah.
right? Even if it's a light fluff entertainment, you don't have capacity to take that in. And let's go back to some of the set of questions. But I think some of the questions were, I think we've already touched upon, like what have you learned about yourself through this experience of immersing yourself in whether it's period drama, historical drama, or just the literary world.
Yeah, I think that it's this, in the end, that we're all the same. We're very much the
Like you said, the
same.
universality
Yeah,
of it
we're
all.
all the same. And even over time and different, contexts that we find ourselves in, we're all looking for someone that we can spend
Connection.
time with, or maybe multiple someones, but we're all looking to have people in our lives that, help give our lives meaning. Many of us are looking for people that we can create a family with.
Yes.
And we're all sort of grappling with the fact that the world didn't start when we were born, right? So there's a whole bunch of other sets of circumstances that we're dropped into. And the circumstances that you see in a historical fiction might be a little bit differently colored than the ones you and I find ourselves in today. But yeah, we're definitely all human facing the same kind of quest.
Yeah. And some of your highs and low of reading a lot of the range of books.
Well,
or romance,
I was going to
young
say,
adult, new
like,
adult.
it's trendier now with Bridgerton. I think Shonda Land has made it almost mainstream.
Normalizing it, yes.
It's normalized it and glamorized it, right? It's and then back when I liked that stuff, it was not popular.
No, I had no one to talk about.
No, I had no one to talk about, and if anything, I was like,
that was the next question.
No one's gonna. I don't think I should talk about this. People are not gonna like me. Okay.
See, that's another question: is your curiosity in these genres, especially whether it's Regency or period drama. Who do you go? How did you navigate wanting to connect with anyone? Was it like did you just limit to be like, I want to connect with you because I really like these genre of books, or it's just I want to connect with you specifically because of this time period? Or did you even connect with anyone or a literary group? Like, how did you know?
Yeah, I think that I would see people online talking about the same things, but in person, it was very rare.
Because I remember when
that's how we became friends. Yeah.
I remember like, oh, have you seen Bridgerton? And you're like, yeah, this is season 1. Perfect.
Yeah.
And you're like, how many times did you watch it? I said 10. And you're like, what? Someone else who watched it more than like 2 times.
Yeah.
And that's how we connected.
Right.
I was like, oh, my fellow kindred.
Yeah, it's now, but I think it, where I grew up, it was not really it was not popular at all. And it was also kind of like seen as boring or dry or like more of an adult thing but yeah, now it's,
like you said, it's been normalized. Yeah.
Normalized, but also I think people, as you grow older, you're more open about, no, I do like that or I don't like that.
Yeah. But do you find more so now because it's normalized, you're able to connect with a another set of community of group aside from me, like, we bounce back in terms of, like, period drama, romance, literary stuff, but are there other groups of, people that in your circle that you have met where you're able to, like, talk openly about it?
Yeah, I think it uh has led to a lot more conversations and a lot more people, like, I've introduced other people to it now because
Mm.
I'm not going to convince someone who has never touched anything historical, regency, anything,
Mhm.
to go to, like, a very um, long, in their mind, mini series. It's set, no, basically there's like no technology, right? Like there's candlelight for nighttime and things like that. They're not doing that. But Bridgerton is so, like, most people have a Netflix,
Yes.
right? And most people, like, it's been advertised so widely,
Mhm.
whether you're just shopping and they're like, "Oh, Dove has a Bridgerton tie," and, like, most people are like, "Okay, it's not that far stretch for me to try this." I had someone try it who was not, um had never really been exposed to that the way I was, and I
Mm.
remember they couldn't get over the style of dress and how you would wear your bust up so high.
Yeah.
She thought it was so weird,
Yeah.
and I'm like, "Well, it was so normal to do that, like, that's actually
Yes.
historically
Yes.
accurate that they would have that, and, but, like, that's the part that she couldn't get
Mm.
past.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. She's like, "It's distracting to me." I feel like,
Wow.
yeah, yeah,
That's fascinating.
yeah, and I mean, with Bridgerton, because it's a lot more open door into what's happening in the bedroom, um, I think
It's normalized sex,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Conversation?
yeah, so I've talked to people and it's gone both ways. So I have a good friend who likes this type of stuff, and she doesn't like that about Bridgerton.
The sex part?
Yeah, because
See?
she's like, "That's not part of Regency romance, that's not part of, like, Jane Austen never would have put, like, you don't see Mr. Darcy
Okay,
and Elizabeth get
so my
naked."
my next question to that is, and I asked Rachel this question was, how do you navigate holding space for difference and similarities? Because you are connecting on period drama, but clearly, like, you embrace the modernization of Shondaland's interpretation, um, and also Julia Quinn's modernization of smut, right? With that added form of Regency. But here is someone who's like a purist who will only default to no, Regency has to look like this. There's this rigidity to it. So how do you navigate holding space for that difference with your view and their view?
Well, I think it's really interesting to hear someone explain, right? Why they don't wanna do it, and what do they get out of keeping themselves, like, they're sort of it's almost like, you're sort of missing out a little bit,
Yes,
right?
yes.
On even, no one's saying you have to like it or watch every season or watch it multiple times, but if you don't at least try it a little bit, especially when it's already so adjacent to the things you like, it's like, how do you even have a you can't even have a conversation on with
Yes.
someone about it. So I don't know, I like hearing about what people's rationale is for liking it or not liking it.
Does it bother you that they don't share your view?
Um, hmm.
Or are you okay with holding space for their difference? Like,
I
you're allowed
think
to.
I think I'm actually okay with people. I like it. My favorite thing is a smart person disagreeing with me
Mm.
and explaining and maybe bringing up something. But but I also have and struggle with my own ego.
Mm.
So ideally, it's someone who can disagree with me without making me feel put down or attacked. And it's a great way for me to figure out who I'm going to get along with,
Mm.
because there's some people who, like, I remember talking to someone else about Bridgerton, and they said, "Well, I tried to watch it and it's a show just for me, but then my husband was taking a nap and he woke up at a certain part and started making fun of it and criticizing it." And it's like, she's like, "I can't watch it with him around." And
Mhm.
it's kind of like, you don't want to top a conversation with someone who is just going to, like, poke fun at it and make fun of it and not try to see any of, like, the positives of it.
Yeah.
So that kinda thing, it's kinda, but it's someone who's, like, got an actual critique, that I'm open
But
to.
that's a reflection in terms of today's polarity is like, how do you hold space for difference and similarity
It's hard.
without, like you said, without the ego and getting in the way? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I used to like when I met my husband. I had to kick him out eventually, whenever rom-com was on, because he would be
You
like,
rip it apart,
you rip
right?
it
Yeah,
apart. He'd
yeah,
be like,
yeah.
"This isn't realistic. Nobody ends up with happy ending." And I'm like, "Can you just leave the room? I just need a dopamine rush and appreciate this." And now my daughter's doing the same thing to me because she's like consuming like rom-com anime. And
Mm.
every time me and my husband were like, "Oh my God, so melodramatic." She's like, "Shh, leave the room." And so we're laughing. We're like, "Yeah, your dad did that to me," you know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, we do that to each other, right?
yeah.
We do. And even myself, like, there's certain dialogue that I've overheard, and I'm like, wow, that's really cheesy or
Mhm.
really like whatever the case is. And, these things get made because they resonate with someone
Yes. Can we
and
hold
they're
space and appreciate it from
enjoyed
their
by
lens?
someone. Yeah. And I think with Bridgerton, I think there's a lot of critiques you could bring, but I think there's a lot of positive that's trying to be done.
I like it because, like, I think as women, and you can share your experience about it too, is Regency, yes, it's Regency, then they would not talk about smut, right? Especially Jane Austen's era. But to your friend's point, it could also be a reflection on their discomfort with conversations around intimacy,
Mhm.
right? And so having Shondaland depict this adaptation of Julia Quinn's, normalizing that, like you said, sex and romance and love, they are so intertwined. And to just kind of like, oh, let's put the intimacy in a hidden box and shove it away. It says more about like how we were brought up and how we had that conversation about our body. And even just seeing like so the body positivity, like different women and just like Penelope, like when have you seen like a plus size woman on screen bare her boobs,
Never.
gorgeous boobs, you know? But
Never.
to normalize that that is like also an acceptable body type from any lens. It's just what we've seen is just stickler.
I think that men, okay, now I'm speaking specifically about straight men here, but I think straight men were ahead in the sense that they were already viewing that as an attractive body type.
Yes.
It was women
Yes.
that didn't see it that
No,
way.
yeah.
And I actually think that sometimes it can be women who are the most critical
Yes.
of the different body types. And yeah, like I remember one of the things I used to do
Mhm.
when I was younger and my friends and I were dating was like, I used to think that you had to, like, let's say you were like somewhat attractive, you'd be with someone somewhat attractive.
Yes.
If you were fit, you were with someone whose body was super fit. And I didn't recognize that, like, you can have differences in those things
Yes.
and still find a source of attraction.
Yes.
And you see that in the couplings that happen
Mhm.
in Bridgerton.
Yes.
They're not always the same. They're not always, or sometimes they are really similar.
Mhm.
And it's like it can go either way. And yeah, I think that
But do you think that that has evolved more with where you're at now? Because like kind of going back to what you're saying, it's like what I was raised to believe is like doctors don't marry a garbage man.
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
There's a level of class. Like
Mhm.
if you're an educated person, whether it's you or the person who you're attracted to, in order for them to choose you, you better meet them where they're at in terms of class or
Mhm. Mhm.
education. Like the fact that there's this impossibility of like a garbage man who kind of like going back to one of your couple's character in the Irish, where the older sister married wealthy, but she's unhappy. But she's envious of her sister, who's like a cleaning lady, and she's married poor, but she's extremely happy,
Mhm.
right? So it's like wealth isn't a determinant of like happiness in the context of these books.
Mhm.
But just how's that evolved with where you're at now to see that contrast that I don't have to buy into that notion that you have to be like two attractive people to come together. You can also be of differences.
I think it's totally changed things for me. It's totally changed things for me. My eyes are a lot more open in terms of I was very judgmental of some other couples, pairings.
Same. My ignorance was very like up there when I was much younger. Yeah.
Um, and I think, like, I have friends who are still stuck there.
Mhm.
single. They're also single, and I think there's a connection between that. I think there is still that, you know, one of the things that happens, like, in Bridgerton, right? They have, like, the marriage mart, and there's a certain time pressure where it's like, okay, you only have a few seasons where you're out
Mhm.
in society, and you get to pick your person, and now we don't really have that concept of, okay, this is you're out and you have to pick someone, but kind of we should just sort of need it. Like,
We
people need
kind
to think
of
about these
we
things.
kinda do, which is from a woman's disadvantage, which is we're on the clock,
Right.
biological
Yes.
clock.
And I used to deny that we
Yes,
were when I was younger
there are
too.
options for IVF, but even that's not guaranteed, and do you have the financial mean to go there or
Okay,
even
but
freeze your eggs?
that's what women are doing now. So
Yes.
I have a friend who is younger than me. She's about 4 years younger than me.
Mhm.
So she would be, she's 36 ish. And I think she froze her eggs when she was even younger.
Mhm.
It's like, why are you doing that?
Mhm.
She's like, well, I can't guarantee that I'm going to find the person with this, and this, and this, and this, and I'm going to connect with them. And like, she's still waiting on this. Like, she's waiting for Mr. Darcy.
Mr.
Her
Right.
eggs, the eggs are in the
Yeah,
freezer,
yeah.
and you're paying for them to hang out there waiting for her, right? Waiting for him to come around. And I'm just like,
That's her choice and her journey.
yeah, it is. It is.
To the question, which is, why did you still return to that world? What made you stay, or why did you walk away? Like you were done with this genre, this period. I'm gonna branch out.
There's a nostalgic element of it for me, right? Like a certain return to kind of like,
Simplicity.
yeah, and to things that I liked as a when I was growing up, and like I connected with my mother, and I exposed my husband to it. So my husband's seen the BBC Pride and Prejudice. He's seen the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice. He's seen Sense and Sensibility. Is Ang Lee, directed by Ang Lee, the one that you were mentioning with like. So he's not going to sit down and read a historical romance like, you're talking about Lorraine Heath. No, that's never going to happen. But it can still be a point of connection, like, especially if someone's willing to branch out and try to appreciate it. And I would do the same thing for him if he's got a very specific genre that I maybe, right?
And do you catch yourself kind of like what you said? Have you got to the point now where when you're trying to connect with him with his share interest to not give commentary, vice versa, or when he's sitting down watching like Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility or Bridgerton to reserve the commentary and so that you're both watching it from an appreciative lens rather than like I'm sharing something that's significant to me. I really enjoy it, but now you're giving your 2 cents that's kinda ruining this aspect, kinda like with your friend and her husband,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. No, I think I am pretty good about that, especially if I can see that someone's coming to it for genuine
Mm.
passion, right? I try to see like what gets them excited. Honestly, when it all gets boiled down, it's all the same sort of feelings and emotions, and like an interesting setting or an interesting plot. Like, I think that you can
Do you
find a
have
connection
discussions
there.
after the fact about it?
Uh-huh. Yep, for sure we do. Like, I think, um, so, okay, I'm going back to Pride and Prejudice again, but that story, right? That story is the basis for, like, Bridget Jones' Diaries
Yes.
and so many other things. So there's an adaptation, Pride and Prejudice and
Mhm.
Zombies. And my husband loves, like, sword fighting and that kind of thing, and, like, martial arts,
To incorporate historical
and
romance with
then
this, yeah,
the
this, yes.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, it's the Pride and Prejudice story, and there's, like, fighting, and everybody's trained in,
Yeah,
like,
martial
different
art,
types of
yes.
martial arts and stuff.
I remember.
So, I think that there's other perhaps couples that are very similar to us and that we're coming together over those shared things, and I think, like, it these all of our interests can exist together in
Yes.
mashups sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Um, but so
'Cause but, like, what I'm hearing, like you said, like, the reason you are staying to historical romance, like you said, there's a return to nostalgia and simplicity
Mhm.
because what? Why? Because the nature of what life is right
Sometimes I'm
now?
sick of technology. right? Do you ever get sit like, I'm gonna check my cell phone in Lake Ontario,
Mm.
and I look back at these periods in history, and I'm like, "Oh, like letter writing," right? They're
Yes.
communicating with
Yes.
letters.
It's not just short form, it's long
Yeah,
form.
yeah. They take a lot of time
Their
to
time, yeah.
right? They're, you know, the idea, like, their human connection in some ways is stronger than ours because your whole society class was getting together,
Yes.
right? And, I think the other classes were doing it as well, but this we talked about Bridgerton focuses on, like, the peerage.
Mm.
They're all getting together and interacting, and even the people who don't take the dance floor, they're still, like, mixing and mingling, and I kinda miss I don't know,
I know
I
what you
never
mean.
really even had it, but I somehow
Yes.
miss it.
Yes.
Like, I think we had it in school, right, where we were all together, like, when's the last time, like, everybody was, like, had to get, like, I don't know, like, a
Yes.
school assembly, like, you're just all together and you
Yes.
can, like, even just look at other people like, "Oh, that's what that person looks like right
But see, that's the
now," and
detriment of technology. Is like, in some ways, the creation of cell phone is to make it universally possible to connect to each other, which it has.
Mm,
Like, I can talk to my uncle through video as opposed to landline, snail line, with a calling card, right?
mhm,
Or Skype. Whereas
mhm.
now I can just video message him on Messenger. So there's a way to connect. The double-edged sword is we're lonelier. We're so removed.
Yes.
We're not engaging with each other. There's this a default escapism of doom scrolling and just like on your
So
phone.
doom scrolling, and so one of the things I've done is I don't go on Facebook anymore.
Mhm.
I have certain restrictions for myself. So I try to not consume short form content
Mhm.
that's designed to be addictive and give
A
you those
dopamine rush,
quick
yeah.
hits of dopamine. I try to keep it to long form content, and I try to only go on and I don't always accomplish this
Yeah.
because I get sucked into holes, but I try to only go on Instagram when it's either a book recommendation, or some type of art tutorial.
Mm.
Those are sort of the restrictions I make as opposed to, I don't know, here's what, Kylie Jenner and Timothy Chalamet ate for
Yeah.
lunch yesterday or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, here's this gown or here's that gown.
Mm.
But even still, like when I check on the search function of my only art Instagram, the algorithm's still trying to push me to like influencers or
Mm.
minor celebrities or all of those things. And it's like the apps are designed
To
to
get you
be
straight hooked,
addictive.
yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like we almost have to it does take a certain amount of if you get yourself passively doing something, it's negative. Like it takes active effort to be like,
Mm.
even to read an actual physical book, sit down and read a book.
The headspace, yeah.
Yeah, it takes active effort because it's so much easier to just turn on the TV, to just
Mindlessly
put
watch
a
something.
YouTube video,
Yeah.
mindlessly watch something, or like I've heard now, a lot of these streaming services, their shows, their movies, the direction to the writers is write dialogue that can be understood for passive listeners who are also on their phones.
What does that mean?
It means that they are writing something for an audience that is watching but also on their phone and every so
Oh,
often.
I've
So
been at
what do you
fault.
think that's doing
I've been at
to
fault because there were times when I scolded my daughter. I'm like, okay, you're on your tablet and you've got XO Kitty on, and she's like, you're doing the same thing. So I appreciate that she's calling me out on it. So I'm trying to model like if we're focusing on the television, let's put this device down.
right? And so when I was younger, and I remember trying to have my laptop on my lap to do something
Mm.
when I would be watching TV or something with my parents. My parents would be like, "Get that out of here. If you want to be on your laptop, you go and you be on your laptop, but you're not doing like both at the same time." Um,
It's teaching you to be present to that one focus rather than like, are you really focused? Like it's kind of like if you're talking to me, are you really focusing on me or you're on your phone while you're trying to show that you're focused on
well,
me?
and I think it also speaks to like we're fed so much stimulation
Yes.
that sitting down and reading a book,
It's such a
we have
commitment.
trouble, and we have trouble focusing, right?
Yes.
Because this is pulling our focus, that's pulling our focus, and with the short-term content or short form content, it's like they've diluted it into, like, that quick, like, even sometimes 5 seconds,
Yes.
right? And you've already gotten and then you're already flicking. Um, and, like, I don't know if you remember the days when to get short form, huge dopamine like, do you remember, email forwards? When it
Yes.
which there was,
The
like,
chain
chain letter
email?
email forwards, or there would be something like, um, I would get an email forward and it would be like a puppy or something. "Look at
Yeah,
this
happy for
puppy." Yeah.
yeah.
Happy yeah. "Happy Easter," and it would be like a little rooster or something or a
You know
chicken.
what? I have thought of it that way in terms of that going back to the origin of short form and dopamine rush, and that you're right, it has evolved to where it is now. Um, so what have you learned about yourself through this journey of immersing yourself in these different genres and different, time periods of reading?
Hmm.
Whether it's adaptation, in this media format, like you said, like Bridgerton, or even like the BBC Sense and Sensibility. I mean, BBC Prime Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility adaptation versus the original. Like, what's your takeaway in terms of like what you've learned about yourself throughout this journey?
I think it's clear that I'm a bit of a romantic at heart, right?
Mm.
And, perhaps struggle with some idealism, right? Even though I talked all of that I talked all about, like, being told to line up, I do have, like, an idealistic streak. I do want to believe that things will end in a happy way,
Mhm.
and I think it's learning to like myself for those things,
Yes.
and realize that there's lots of other people who are like that too.
Yes.
There's lots of people, like now it's trendy to be open about liking Jane Austen, or it's trendy to be open about liking Bridgerton, and so it's, like, very clear to me that a lot of us maybe either had the potential to be interested in that and weren't exposed, or were exposed and just that wasn't
Acceptable. It's
part of the
yeah.
mainstream
It's
conversation.
normalizing too because it's like in some ways, do you think that comes with shame? Because like like why are
It
you
was
reading
not
like
cool.
ancient
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, 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 it was not cool, and it was also, like I remember, like, when I was liking that type of stuff, like rap music and was really popular and going to clubs. And it's like, the way everyone's dancing in clubs and I'm watching something that's like,
Yeah.
like it was very far off. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I wonder, like, I wish, like, wouldn't it be fun to go and dress up and now you can actually do those
Yes.
things. Right now,
Yes,
everyone's like,
it's
we will set up something, there'll be dance lessons and whatever. But like when I was younger, I was like, the only options were like, you're going, if you want to go somewhere and dance. So I didn't even know like about salsa clubs and things like that, or ballroom dancing
I didn't know that
lessons.
Regency dancing or dressing up in Regency costumes like Jane Austen gatherings has like existed long before Shondaland.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. And I also or I thought it was all just women
Mm.
and all women who were narrowly focused on that. Like, because that's the other thing is I didn't want it to be my whole personality. And I'm fine if someone wants to make it their whole personality, but I didn't want it to be. I also wanted to have like a little bit of other things as well. And so it was like I didn't want to get like, for lack of a better term, typecast.
Mm.
Yeah, I got the sense that like because it wasn't like mainstream popular, if I was gonna find someone who was really into it, it was like I'm gonna have to always be really into it. I
Mm.
don't know if that makes sense.
It does because that says where you're at too because again, I didn't understand nuance, or because I think society has taught us to be in the binary, like,
Mhm.
especially our school systems, like, you're, if you got A's, you're a good student. If you got D's or E's, you're a bad student because you're a failure, right? Or you're a good daughter or you're a bad daughter. So it's so ingrained in us in that teaching that it's not and or like what I struggle with my identity is like if I embrace the Western culture, which is predominantly what I was raised or have immersed in,
Mhm.
even though part of me is like Vietnamese and there's a traditional sense, I always felt like I had to choose one over the other. And it wasn't until later that I realized, I can hold space for both. Both is true.
Mm.
Like, why is it, there's this notion that if you make a mistake, you're like, you immediately default to like self-blame and being like, I'm so dumb. And you're like, okay, let's reframe that conversation. Said, I made a mistake. It wasn't a smart move. And it doesn't mean that I'm dumb. I'm smart. I'm a smart person. I
Mhm.
just made a dumb mistake in that moment. So holding
Mhm.
space for those two different ways of thinking rather than
Mhm.
just assuming if I made a mistake, I'm therefore dumb. That is my
Mhm.
identity. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? But
Mhm.
really I'm not. I'm multifaceted. So I can see that in that regard where you're saying if I just take Regency and only that's all I'm gonna be ever typecast, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't mean that I don't wanna maybe learn another dance or dress up a different way or
You don't have to
explore
stick
a
to Regency.
different period of history.
Yes.
Um,
Even like you said, like that's you go from Regency to Margaret Atwood, which is a dystopian,
yeah, yeah. The
you
Handmaid's
know?
Tale is yeah. Yeah, so I think and I also think for me, I get bored if I think maybe and now that I'm realizing this just now, it's like the reason I kind of go Regency and other things and then maybe come back to it is I don't ever really like to stay in the one place for a long, long time.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my hobbies, it's like almost like I'll concentrate on it for a few months pretty solidly and maybe I take a break from it. Like right now, ever since there was a new season of Bridgerton, I've been doing a rewatch of all of them.
Yes.
But there'll probably be like a whole year and a half where I don't think about Bridgerton, I don't watch it, I don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's maybe just my way of
But you're diversifying your portfolio, right?
right.
Even in the genre of literature, because that's what the term has been out there: multi-passionate, multi-interested. There are those who will only stick to this type of specifically Jane Austen like Regency. You and I have evolved to be like, yes, this has been our indirect path. It was introduced to us. And then we're like, let's see where this goes. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
just like a plethora of romantic genres, whether it's modernization, smut combined. It's just this expansive world that keeping an open mind has allowed you to kind of like embrace those different.
Well, and I think also we're seeing like I've been a reader long enough that I'm seeing what's getting like so many books that get popular are getting adapted. And so now I'm starting to get to the point, well, like what about this other series that I've liked?
Yes.
Why isn't that getting adapted?
Yes.
And this other series is super popular, but we still don't have an adaptation of that.
Well, there's a recent interview with Julia Quinn on. There's a new podcast. I haven't listened to it yet, but it's spearheaded by three women, and they're American rugby champion.
Interesting.
And they asked her what was her thought when Shonda approached her and said, "We want to adapt your work into modernization, but you have to relinquish the creative rights." And she said, Quinn said, at that point, she's like, I trust Shondaland based on her previous content that
Mm-hmm.
she wasn't going to botch this up.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, she said, up until that point, no one has adapted any form of literary aside from so many iterations of Jane Austen or the Bronte sister, right? And she said the only other extreme was Outlander.
That was the only one that comes to
Yeah,
mind. So, and I feel like if I'm not mistaken, the author stayed involved in the production or
yeah.
that particular adaptation.
Yeah, and Quinn is still the consulting, but she kind of said that when Shonda pitched to her, said, "I want to modernize this and have like bi representation, diversity." She thought, you know what, I like that because I didn't write from that lens, and I like where you're going with it. I'm okay with it, and I trust and hope that she's like, if I pass up on this, there's no way that literary world of where I come from of similar genres is ever going to be exposed again.
No, yeah, and I think that it did expose a lot of even countries like the reach of Netflix
Yes,
is
it's
amazing.
broad. Yeah.
Yeah, so it has exposed a lot of people to that story, to her stories, and to you know a modern version of that. Like
Yeah, and the
they've done,
Buccaneers, because of Bridgerton, Prime has done their take off the adaptation of the Buccaneers, which is more a later time. I think it's not Regency. I think it's like late 1800s. But just feeding off of that, right?
This is so the Buccaneers you're talking about is interesting because Bridgerton is very much like that's clearly England.
Yes.
And a version of, kind of a fantasy version of it. The Buccaneers is about Americans who go to England, correct? Yeah. So it's interesting because I feel like we saw the same thing there was Downton Abbey.
Yes.
And then there's the Gilded Age, right?
Yes.
Where it's like there's, we forget, being Canadian, the United States has a huge population. And there's not a lot of historical pieces actually set in the United States that
they're so vital too, right?
Right.
I think Joanna Shoup, one of the literary influencers I follow, she recommended Joanna Shoup. And up until that point, I was specifically Regency, and Joanna Shoup is basically late 1800, early 1900, kind of like the Gilded Age. These are like entrepreneurs,
okay. Which is so American to have an entrepreneur as your.
It's focused in New York, so it's the up and coming of like the modernization of what we see as Manhattan today, New York, and these are like entrepreneurs that are newspaper mogul, kind of like the Gilded Age, which is train mogul. At Carnegie Hall, and this expansive world. But if you want to talk about benchmark, I haven't gotten to what is it, romantasy yet?
Oh,
because Rachel recommended.
I'll come back for another.
Yeah, so Rachel,
we'll have the
three of us because Rachel
recommended. We can have a bunch of. Sarah J. Maas?
ACOTAR.
Yeah, so A Court of Thorns and Roses is what you mean, ACOTAR?
So she was talking about that, but in terms of my benchmark of smut, I think Bridgerton was an introduction to romance and smut in a normalized ways. And then I go to Lisa Kleypas, which is one level.
I've heard of Lisa Kleypas before.
But when you go to Joanna Shoup, holy dirtiness, it is so vulgar, but it's also appealing at the same time.
ACOTAR has a lot of smut in it for sure. So my question to you then is, do you want smut in your historical romance depictions, or do you care?
I do.
You actually actively are like, I'd prefer if it was included, or are you neutral? It's up to the author.
I especially say Mary Balogh, I didn't know what to expect from her. People just said she's similar to Jane Austen. She writes Regency, but she does talk about which Jane Austen doesn't do, which is the act of sex, right?
Yeah.
But she doesn't. She kind of I would say skim across the act, whereas there's a physical attraction there, but they sleep together, but it doesn't go into detail dirty language, what you would Joanna Shoup is vulgarity to vulgarity. Then you have Lisa Kleypas, which is visually, she explains it similar to Julia Quinn, right? How they come together, the intimacy, that desire, and normalizing sex, even though it is prudish in that Regency period, that is still in existence, that people are human and they still have these innate physical desire towards each other. They could explain, because maybe they weren't we see it in Bridgerton, the marriage act coming together, even the mom struggling to explain to her daughters,
or the two characters that thought you can make a baby just by laying down side by side, and the man making a mess in his pants.
Or the most common reference is, I think I know it's because I see animals going at each other. And that's the template that what women are measuring by. And so it's kind of
that's covered in Outlander too. So Claire and Jamie are the main characters. Jamie, when he first has sex with Claire, after their full sex scene, he's like, I didn't know you could do it face to face like that, because he had only seen the animals mounting each other. Yeah.
And so women are thinking the same thing, right? And so I was just because there's one book in Lisa Kleypas where she's facing down, and it's just do it, and he's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I've seen enough performance in Animals in Nature. And he breaks out laughing, because the men in a lot of these period drama are more sexually experienced.
They're always
sexually experienced, and so he's like, there's different ways to do. And she's like, there is? You never see animals come together that card, but we're digressing. What's one thing what were some, because you said that, going back to what you're saying, what you learned about yourself. Now, what were some things you didn't like about the literary world of these different genres?
Yeah, I think that in some ways, like, I there's stuff that I don't relate to, right?
Mm.
Like, I think I thought that if I was like Elizabeth Bennet and, like, a little bit outspoken and I don't know, like, sh that I would automatically meet, like, a Mr. Darcy type.
Yes.
Um,
See what you mean. It's not an accurate depiction of him.
well, there's that, and there's also just, I think, um it's just one story,
Yes.
right? I also think something like it definitely, yeah, it's definitely we covered like it sort of stops at one point, the story.
Yes, you don't know
That's
that.
something I didn't really like. Um, I think it can feel repetitive if I read too much of them, right? It can feel repetitive and sometimes it's like I wanna see someone struggle exactly with what I have to struggle with, right?
Yes.
I wanna see a woman who's struggling to find a job or work and be a mother,
Yes.
not someone who's not only
Serve
do
Hannah
they
Fire.
not have to work and have servants, but their husband doesn't even work. It's frowned upon for any of you to work. You just live off of, I don't know, rents from your tenants and your yeah. But I mean, like, the interesting thing to me is, like, the concept of a dowry. I remember reading it about that as a girl. Outraged. How dare a woman be traded for money and,
It's
like
still practiced today,
yeah,
you know?
it is, and
It's baffling.
I know people who told me that it, like, was a tradition even in their culture that you offer the dowry, but that the male's family says no, and that that's, like, a symbolic thing too, to have a dowry offered, but then to reject it and say,
Wow.
like, "We don't need it," or "We don't want it."
I know, like, Vietnamese cultures, in some aspect, the f the bride's side has to pay for the entirety.
Of the wedding?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've heard of that stuff too. Um, I think, you know, the concept of, like, when they're talking about he has, like, Pride and Prejudice, he has 5,000 a year, right?
I can't wrap my head around with
Yeah, and that's
in
a
terms of
lot of
conversion.
money. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, what is it that would make, like, a person consider, like, what's the monetary equivalent? And you're sort of like, you know, what do they own their own place or not? Is the same thing with, like, he has these many houses, like, he has the country estate and the
It's a cottage.
yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
got a Ferrari.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So there is that stuff that's the same. But also, like, I think because I live in an urban environment, often, even if it is depicting what is more of a city environment, it's not the same as living in an urban environment. So it's like they're so beautiful. Like, so the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice, like, those scenes are gorgeous in that film. A lot of the like,
Country estate.
dirtiness of, like, the Industrial Revolution and stuff isn't really in it.
And I think that's why I struggle with Dickens, because the realism
It's too
was
much
too
realism for you.
especially when you go
Yeah.
from escapism like Jane Austen to Dickens, which is too much realism of, like, I didn't know England can look like that. Do you know what I mean? I just thought England looked like the peerage, middle class, tent, servants and everything. And then you get to, like, oh, there's this another world where people are struggling, kind of like our real world. It's gross, it's dirty, it's cholera, it's all these, like, realism, but I think it was really hard for me to kind of take it in. I just had to pace myself. And so I just, like, I need escapism that doesn't.
Well, so to your point about escapism, I think when did Bridgerton first came out, I was
2020.
yes. So it was a nice escape
Yes.
from the
And
isolation
the uncertainty
and
of the world.
yeah, and the uncertainty of COVID, the constant announcements about different restrictions, and it was nice to go to a world that didn't have COVID.
Mhm.
as well as didn't have the technology, right? So I think it kind of came at the right time too to be popular in that way, and it came at the right time for me to sort of have that nice escape. Um, but it's also kind of like even with the diversity in body types, there's one type of diversity that Shonda has not covered. She's got body type diversity, she's got racial diversity. Even with this most recent,
Sophie Beck, yeah,
yeah,
classes.
they're doing different classes. But you know what? There isn't in this. There's nobody who's ugly or less traditionally attractive, right? And I think that says something. We're not worried about, we do not, especially things that are North American made and distributed, there's no space for normal looking to unattractive folks. And I find it's not like you can't find media that has that, but everybody in Bridgerton is attractive. Is there one person in the entire show, side character or main character, that is just totally
unattractive?
Yeah.
It's really subjective to the viewer, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder and where they're at. Like, if watching that you can see yourself in the character, obviously, like where I'm at now, I don't look, yes, I recognize that they're attractive, but I'm looking beyond that in terms of the character. I also recognize that it's not a real depiction of reality. There's aspects
You
that I
have
can
to
relate
recognize
to.
it. Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're
yeah.
watching it with a grain of salt. Whereas I think if you were to ask me, when I first was exposed to Regency, there's that naiveness that I was like, oh, because my world, my reality just was too trauma filled. And so that's why I think Dickon was too much for me. It was very triggering. Whereas Jane Austen is like, oh, so there is a world where I can just escape and not think about trauma.
Yeah. Do the Bridgertons ever piss you off because they're all attractive and wealthy? Or you're like, no, I like the Bridgertons.
I didn't get to that part until I think I was exposed to Downton Abbey.
Oh, okay.
I think the Downton Abbey, I appreciate it for what it was, because it's kind of like you said, it's normalizing the working class and struggling working class in a period lens where you normally don't see that, aside from it being the side characters, because the working class is the main characters. They're the main factor, whereas like the leads, like the ones they're serving, the owners of the estates, they're just part of it, but the core aspect is the serving class, right? No, it doesn't bother me. I think I've kind of recognized that it is what it is.
Okay, if you lived in Bridgerton in that show, right? You're a family, you live in Mayfair, right? What, like, how would you be? Are you out dancing at the balls, playing the traditional female role, trying to get the best match you can? Are you like questioning it? Like, I think those are interesting thought questions, because it's very easy to look at historical stuff from a position of, this is where I am. Like, we've been educated a certain way, right? And we can look at these things very critically. A real person living at that time would not have the benefit of all of the knowledge that we have, or the education or the history that we have.
I think I would be more like Daphne in my naiveness of, like, I was bred to be this way. And I think it's hard to not contrast where I was, because as a people pleaser, that's what you want to make your parents happy, right? They tell you, like, especially when you come from a poor family, like, marry wealthy, right?
Yeah.
So that will guarantee your livelihood. You don't have to think about money in that regard. Now where I'm at, I see myself more like Eloise, just fighting fighting the system, being outspoken. But obviously in her case, it's rare, because she's in a family that is accepting of that, whereas in most family dynamics, whether it's then, be like, no, shut that down. It's not acceptable. You're gonna be an old maid if you keep this up, right?
Spinster on the shelf. They use those words, eh? And it's
no different than here, because like I remember when I went back home in my 30, that was the question across the board, because 30 is considered old back there. People are already on their 5th kid or 4th kid, and I haven't even settled down yet. It's like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you not married? Or why are you not with someone? So it's like, that that's considered old maid here, right? And it's just like, I can't help you unpack that because our world are so different. And the last question is, what is your hope and vision for the direction of whether it's period drama, adaptation? What would you like to see more? What would you like to see less?
So
Or
I have an answer. So I did attempt to prep for these questions.
that's okay.
So this is my answer for this one. I would like to see more period dramas set in other countries reflective of what that period would have been like
Yes.
in other countries.
Yes.
And I don't just mean like British India or something, where it's just basically like more white British people, but
Mm.
I mean, like, I don't know, somewhere like I'd love to see the Philippines, or I'm trying to think of another location that might be interesting.
See, but that's
Um,
where you have to go to K-drama because, like,
so yes,
or
they
different,
have period
yeah,
stuff.
like there's
Yeah.
dub stuff, like, because I know when I was growing up, we would watch the Chinese version dub in Vietnamese of the Shanghai period,
Okay. Yeah.
which is still like colonized China, right? But it's very like, the traditional dress, and that period, and how they navigate, which is a template through a lot of these romantic drama, struggling with class acceptance, while a war is going on. Shogun is a good example.
I have watched Shogun.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, not when it came out, I watched
but
it.
same thing. It's dubbed, but it speaks for itself because it's so well written and interpreted and act.
It's Shogun is just so well
And
done.
and so it's like it's showing feudal Japan, and how they navigated Portuguese colonization, right? Or other like Portuguese and English colonization, to kind of conquer like the East. And so again, but that's still like royalty. That's a higher class
Mhm.
of shogun, but it's showing period drama.
Yes, and I do love that and has a little bit of fighting in it, which is why I think I watched it with my husband, because 'cause it's got a bit, and not just men fighting, but like,
Women fighting.
yeah, and so I learned that that was the traditional women I can't remember the word for it, but they would fight with a really long shinais, and they were key in protecting the homestead. I think, like, as so that was cool because
Yeah.
it's nice to depict K
But
dramas. I have watched, so I have watched some historical K dramas. Those costumes are fabulous.
so what I'm hearing is like you said, you would like to see more world diversity of period drama. Is it more like acted from an English standpoint, or
Yeah,
because that has already existed?
I don't want to see the British Empire. I've had enough of, not that I don't like those stories and don't connect with them as someone who's like a descendant of people who came from Europe to Canada. But seeing like Japan, like the Shogun, like Shogun, there's not a lot of Shoguns out there, right? You're right. There is definitely like the K dramas. They have done a good job with like
Mhm.
their historical stuff. Um,
So what I'm trying to say is that it's already in existence. What your vision is, I think it's just more of choosing to explore those diversity, um, whether it's from a dub lens or just watching it for what it is.
Maybe it'll be the same thing. Like maybe one day all of that stuff will be more mainstream and
Normalized.
popular. Right now that stuff is still kind of like a bit on the edge, or on the outside of, at least people in my circles are not talking all about it.
Mhm.
I
So
do
that's
think
more
it's
like
getting,
adaptation, screen
yeah.
adaptation, but in terms of written work, like
Oh, what would I like to see in terms of written work? Is that what you're saying?
both too.
Um, I don't know. I actually really enjoy like the time travel. I saw the other day there's a book that's out now or coming out. And the premise is they use this time traveling. Basically, it's someone who's, have you ever seen, now there's influencers who glamorize like making bread the way they
Yeah,
used
trad
to.
life.
Yeah, but like going way like almost pioneer
Yes,
in the
trad
so yeah,
life.
yeah. And so in this book, someone's like that in our times, and like, they're like grinding the coffee beans by hand and roasting them over the fire and blah blah blah. and they get sent. They time travel, like, not of their own volition, back to that time period.
How's that different from Outlander?
It's not, except it's got a little more of, it's almost a little bit more like a criticism of this person for. So one of the things that a lot of these historicals that we've talked about is they're not showing the bad parts of history, right? We don't have to see the lack of indoor plumbing and that kind of thing. And Outlander touches on that a little bit, but like with Outlander, the character happens to be like Claire. She's raised, I believe it was by her uncle. So she had done wide traveling. She's very aware of history.
Unconventional for a woman of that time.
Yeah, correct. And she's also a healer, which is a
nurse,
skill
yes.
and she's just come off of World War I, I believe it was. So she's got a lot of tools in the toolkit versus, like, I think it'd be interesting to put, like, we have a lot of things about, modernity that we really like, and we don't really explore those.
There is a movie.
Is there?
I
Okay.
I mentioned it once to you. I forgot the title off the top of my head. It's basically Pride and Prejudice. The girl is modern, and she discovers a portal.
You did tell me about
this
one.
A bathroom shower, and she ends up in Regency England, and she swaps place with Elizabeth Bennet, who goes to her future. And Elizabeth Bennet, like, without spoiling, but so this girl ends up becoming like the template Elizabeth Bennet, and she's just immersed in that world. She falls in love with Mr. Darcy, and she kind of like, she struggles with the world, but again, it doesn't show to that detail of the struggle. Whereas Elizabeth Bennet's like, oh wow, there is a future where women can be autonomous and be appreciated and accepted. I like to stay here.
She doesn't miss any of her sisters.
See, that's where it's lacking. It's a three episodes, so I think in that regard, kind of like what you said, time travel, but maybe expanding and covering the realism of what you're missing.
Well, and I think, like, one of the things that Bridgerton really is, it's a blend, right? Because it's got a lot of modern things in it. It's kind of like, maybe there's like there's a Regency romance, but in space or something. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, there's opportunity to, like, genre cross.
Yes, I agree.
I think so.
I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for your time.
Oh,
I think we could go on forever. So
probably.
Audience, this will be a 2-part series. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected. Thanks, Ashley.